tells you everything.
That's it. That music gets you going. There are several races and measures on the ballot across the U.S. Here are a few of the ones that we're watching closely. Let's start with the Virginia governor's race. Former Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger facing off against Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears.
There is also the closely watched mayoral race here in New York City. Democrat Zohran Mamdani is competing against former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who is running as an independent, as well as Republican Curtis Sliwa.
And in California, voters are deciding on a redistricting measure known as Proposition 50. If it passes, it will allow the state legislature there to redraw the congressional maps to add more Democratic seats in Congress ahead of next year's midterms.
Let's start off this hour with Hallie Jackson, NBC News senior Washington correspondent and anchor of Hallie Jackson Now. Hallie, so good to see you. Have you on
election day.
Happy election day. Let's get nerdy because you know everything about this. We keep hearing that the mayoral race in New York, the gubernatorial race in Virginia, and the one in New Jersey, that those are things political experts and members of both parties are watching as potential bellwether races.
Yeah.
What are you hearing and why?
Can I give you my big grain of salt, though, before we jump into that conversation, which is I do think, and in conversations over the last multiple days with folks on both sides of the aisle here, there is a tendency to want to over-extrapolate, to go, oh my gosh, okay, it's an election. Right. Voters are voting. Let's talk about everything we learned and how it's going to affect the midterms next year. There may be some threads and some takeaways from tonight, but I would just say as you're watching tonight and as you're looking at the returns come in, just think about the nuance in each of these particular states, especially here in New York City, a fascinating race with two very distinctive candidates. That is not necessarily extrapolatable, if you will, everywhere. But I would say this, threads that I'm looking at, the economy. Look at what all the Democrats in these races in Virginia, in New Jersey, and in New York have done. They have made the cost of living and the economy central to their message. Not necessarily an anti-Trump message or a democracy message. It is all about the pain that people feel when they pull out their wallets to go to pay for groceries. That is super critical. So if we see huge numbers for these Democrats in some of these states, and again, I say Democrats because the polling shows that they are favored to win in each of those races. New Jersey is probably the closest, the most suspenseful, but even there you do have her with a slight lead. But so I look at the economy. I would look at the margins too. If there are Democratic victories, how big are those victories? And the other thing too, is the quote-unquote Trump coalition that turned out in 2024, are they going to show up if Donald Trump's name is not on the ballot? In other words, is Jack Ciattarelli going to see the same kind of, let's say, Latino support in New Jersey? That's right. In a state like, in a county like Passaic, which has a super high Latino population, will people who showed up for Donald Trump, who were first, second-time voters, will they come out again when he is not on the ballot in an off year? So lots of questions that I know we'll be looking at tonight.
Can I ask about California and this proposition about redistricting and the way, you know, the state has congressional districts, changing the map, essentially. Yeah. If that passes or fails, what do we take away? Like, could that lead to other efforts going forward or not?
This is just the beginning of what I'm thinking about as the redistricting arms race in this country. It is led and pushed by President Trump, who wanted to see states do this. You saw Texas do that initially, redistricting in order to look to add 5 seats, again, nationally in Congress in D.C. California now putting up the fight to counterbalance this, they say, and you see the current and proposed maps there, it would be 5 seats. But you have other Democratic states. You have other Republican states, Indiana among them. I'm thinking of New York, for example, that are looking to do some redistricting of their own. This could really change the landscape when it comes to the congressional map big picture in 2026. You know the other interesting thing about California, though? It's all about redistricting. It's also a little bit about California Governor Gavin Newsom and him taking up this mantle as kind of the leader of the anti-Trump opposition and what this means for him. So there's like a side nerd.
I wonder what it might mean.
Exactly.
Maybe he has some more goals.
2028, perhaps? I don't know.
Yeah. Hallie Jackson, lots to watch. Thanks so much.
And do not miss Hallie on Hallie Jackson Now. That is, of course, streaming live starting at 5 p.m. Eastern on NBC News Now. Then stick around and watch her along with Tom Yamas, Kristen Welker, and Steve Kornacki for complete results and analysis of tonight's races. Our special election night coverage starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC News Now and NBCnews.com.